Today, we're going to talk about change. And are any of you out there thinking about a career move, or perhaps you're in a new role anyway, and you're kind of struggling with, am I my real self? Am I my true self? You might have this fear of losing your identity or not being authentic when you're making or in the mix of change. Well, today we're going to address that question, that concern, because I hear it often from successful leaders like yourselves. And the question I usually get goes something like this: I've built my career and identity over years. Now I'm ready for something new, but how do I change without losing who I am? Now, that may be a real concern for many of you, and I've certainly heard it, especially if you're over 50, because those of us in midlife, we've worked hard to get to where we are. And the thought of changing course sometimes can feel a little daunting. And so the concern of fear you might have about losing your authentic self, it's valid. Whether you're considering a move to the C-suite or that big job, trying to get that corner office, or perhaps you're thinking about running for office, a political office, or contemplating or thinking about a career shift. For those of you I haven't had the pleasure of meeting, I'm Dr. Geneva, and I'm founder and CEO of Dr. Geneva Speaks. And with a 4-decade leadership career, I've raised over $100 million for businesses and community causes and established over 50 partnerships for social impact. I started as a nonprofit leader and transitioned to entrepreneurship in my late 60s, facing many challenges along the way. And I'm passionate about empowering leaders, especially women in leadership roles, to grow their impact and lead better, using the strategies I've developed over my journey, because better leaders create better communities and a better world. So my mission is to help you unlock your leadership potential and live your best, most vibrant life at any age. And when we talk about changes, trust, I've been there myself and have guided many women through this journey. So today, we are going to look at not only how to make that next big move, but really looking at that big move while staying true to the amazing experienced leader you are. And please, as we go along, if you have questions or comments, I want to hear it. So drop them in the chat. And let me say a couple things. So before we get started, I want, first of all, change is natural. It comes, it's going to be here all the time. It's many times unexpected, unpredictable. It happens. Look at the weather, for example. There was a time, right, when we could define the 4 seasons very clearly. And we know what spring, summer, winter, fall look like. That's changed. And even if you think of the weather further, every single day these days, something is new and different with the weather. Well, that's what change is. And so our mindset about change is really important, because the more and more we can look at change as an opportunity and not a threat, the better off things will be for us. Now, oftentimes it's hard. I'm not suggesting that having that mindset is easy at all, but I'd like you to think about your mindset and how you view change and embrace change. And change in itself doesn't mean that you're losing yourself. in it. And because oftentimes change means growing into a better version of yourself. The other thing I want to say before I get into some specific strategies is to remember that change can bring about this concern that as you're adapting to the new role or the new change, that you're putting on a mask, that you're not true to yourself. And I want you to know that this is a natural feeling. Okay. So it's not abnormal. And each of us has this desire to be true to ourselves and express our true feelings, particularly if we're in leadership roles, because being authentic, particularly today, is a really important asset in your leadership toolbox. So I want you again to normalize this feelings about change and about being authentic during the change process. It's normal for you to have concerns. It's normal for you to have some anxiety. These things are normal. But remember, it's not necessarily when we think about change, becoming someone brand new or going through these absolutely new, never heard of things, but really think about it as evolving yourself, going into a next phase, going into a next stage. And for those of you out there over 50, the experience you've had, as well as your age, is an asset, not a liability. I'm going to talk more about that, but I wanted to say a few things before I got into some strategies to kind of set the stage, set your mindset. Again, change is normal. You're going to feel emotions going through those change. It's natural to question, am I still my true self? To have concerns about your identity is natural. And I want you to think about change as not a threat, but an evolving, an evolution of you. Okay, so setting those first few things, here are some strategies I'd like you to think about as you're making some changes in your career, whether it's a complete shift or whether you're trying to move up in your organization, or perhaps running for a political office or being appointed to some new board or commission, some kind of change in your career. I want you to remember, and I invite you to consider these strategies. The first one is to identify really what you want that next step to be. Okay. And that is to become very aware of, well, what is the change that I'm seeking? And make sure that you're clear about that next move and that the next move does align with your values and the things that you feel are important. One of the ways to really remain true to ourselves is to have that kind of deep reflection and thinking about, well, what is this next move? And why do I want this next move? And how will it help me? How will it, be important to me and what I hold as important? So identifying and being crystal clear about what your next step is an important strategy in your journey. I remember uh, one of the women I worked with who was a tech exec, just knew that IT and was really wonderful. And but she wanted to make more of a difference. So we spent a lot of time really delving into, well, why do you think that, or what is it that you're feeling about the current career that you have and what it's bringing to you, what it's giving to you, and what is it in another move that you would make that would get you closer to this making a difference, how I want to help people. She ended up being very clear, spending a lot of time and being very clear and finding that, well, what she really wanted to do was to go into the nonprofit world and where she could actually take her experience as an exec and turn it into helping people more directly. And so having the clarity about your next step is an important strategy to help make sure that you remain true to yourself because you're taking a deep dive and exploring those values. Another strategy that I invite you to think about as you're keeping yourself true and making big career moves is to remember your experience and to leverage that and plan to use that in new areas. So, again, you've got transferable skills and probably more than you think, particularly if you're in midlife. Because if you're in your 40s, 50s, 60s, you have built a vast repertoire of skills, experience, talent. And these skills that you have, these tools in your toolbox, are transferable. And, you've been there, done that. I know you're saying that. I know that those of you out there who are saying, well, listen, as I'm contemplating, thinking about my next career move, what I want to do next, I've been there, done that. That is a superpower because you've been everywhere and you can do everything. That's a superpower. And you can use and leverage this experience as you go into new areas, new career moves, giving you that confidence in who you are and recognizing that what you've done has value and you want to move that value, continue that value, keep that value that you've built that is you, is your identity. Do you understand what I'm saying? Does that make sense? Let me know in the comments. Does that make sense to you? Let me check the comments, see how we doing. Okay. All right. So we're moving right along. So using your experience, what you've built, because you've done it, you've been there, done that, builds that, has that confidence, shows your value. So if you keep those and understand that you can transfer that into any new career move, as you transfer that you transferring is you. That's your identity. Okay. That's you being true to you. Okay. We got that? Makes sense? The third strategy I want to invite you to think about as you're making big moves and trying to hold on to your true self is to recognize that what you're doing is probably a very emotional journey. It's important to acknowledge the mix of excitement and fear that comes along with any change that you make. And this is natural and normal. And it really is important to dive into yourself and acknowledge how you're feeling, the anxiety. When I um, lost my husband after 40 years of marriage. I lost him to cancer. It was during the time that I just started my business. And so I was dealing with these huge changes, the personal change of grief and losing a loved one, and the professional change of starting a business, moving into being an entrepreneurship after being many, many decades in the nonprofit world was all new. Tons of change. There were times I didn't know which way I was going, but tons of change. And and tons and lots of emotions, all kinds of emotions, the grief, the excitement, the fear, the worry, all kinds of things. And stopping for a moment and taking the time to acknowledge that, listen, I am going through an emotional journey, and this is affecting me and my identity and myself. Taking the time to acknowledge that. And one of the things that can help during this is to build this network of peers and people who can support you through this journey. So, again, understanding that you will have to navigate the emotions in any change is important for getting your mind straight. And actually, because when you acknowledge it, then and you know it, then you should do something about it. So you can build your support systems, you can build friends, you can talk to peers, you can pick up the phone and call and recognize that you're going through these emotions. Another strategy that I want you to think about as you move through big changes and keeping true to yourself is to stay true to yourself while you're evolving. Now you say to me, Dr. Geneva, what you talk? That sounds like a little double talk. What you mean? Well, what I'm suggesting to you is that you work hard at understanding the difference between changing your role, like a leadership role, career role, and changing your essence, who you are. Okay. So that as we go through these changes, as we want to move up the ladder, get that promotion, maybe we're thinking about running for office, or just moving from one industry to another like I did. Whatever it is, you're changing a role, you're changing a career, you're stepping into something new and different. You ain't giving up yourself. It's important to keep that in mind, that as we go through these changes in life, that we still have ourselves, that we have our essence. And so being crystal clear, acknowledging and being into our essence of who we are, which means part of what that means is knowing your values, what's important to you, what matters to you, some of those things that are non negotiable for you. So, so this whole concept of losing myself if I step into another role, you ain't going to lose yourself. Remember who you are. Stay true to yourself. Be clear on that. Understand your essence. Okay. Another strategy I invite you to think about is to visualize the change and you being your authentic self as you're changing. Okay. The technique of visualization is incredible. And we're just in the middle of the, Summer Olympics. We're watching all this athletic prowess, and oh, it's just incredible watching these athletes swim and do gymnastics, twirl on the floor and run and race. It's amazing. Bet every single one of them uses the technique of visualizing the win, visualizing themselves crossing that finish line, doing that flip. And so, this is an incredible strategy and technique to use where you create this very clear mental picture of who you desire to be and what you desire to achieve and who you desire to be. So, again, as you're making these changes, as you're thinking about climbing that ladder, going after that new job, visualizing yourself doing that, being in that role. And of course, you're going to visualize yourself, you're going to see yourself as who you are. And so that helps um, with your identity and helps you overcome these fears and boost the confidence. Okay. Just like the athletes are doing in Paris, you can do that also in terms of your career, the changes that you want to make, and helping to stay true to yourself. And then here's the strategy of really being your best advocate. That's the best way to put it, so that you learn the best ways to promote yourself and your skills without feeling like you're bragging or being inauthentic. Okay. This is something that, and if any of you want help with this one in particular or any of the strategies I've talked about, I'd love to chat with you. Please leave me um, a message in the comments or DM me. I'm on all social media platforms. But developing and being comfortable with your personal brand, which is your story. A personal brand is your story. That's your origin story. Why you do what you do, how it aligns, how your values align with who you're trying to help, the problem you're trying to solve, the leadership role that you have. Being crystal clear and developing and crafting that personal brand story. And see, when you craft it around your authentic self. Okay. That's the same thing because it's about your story, your origin story, which is the truth. It's the truth, it's authentic, and it's unique because nobody else has the story that you have. So, crafting your personal brand, your story, being very clear about your brand um, during periods of change, career change, is incredibly important. And it's authentic. Do you understand what I'm saying? Because it's your story and you're going to craft it your personal brand. And so it's going to be about you. So it's going to be authentic. And so, and so those are some strategies. And I'm hoping you're seeing the theme with all of these strategies because one is that I want to suggest to you that when you go to do something new or different or make a change, yourself goes with you. And it really is about being clear and having the clarity about who you are, about developing your brand, about being clear on your why and your values, acknowledging the emotions that you're going through, staying true to yourself while you're evolving, visualizing that change. All of you goes with you in making those changes. So rather than being fearful about losing your identity or authenticity in taking those big steps, rather than being um, fearful that you'll lose your identity, stop and recognize that wherever you go, you will go with you. And so becoming more clear on who you are, whose you are, what you want to be, what your values are, will help you continue to maintain that authenticity throughout your leading. So, those are the things that I wanted to bring to you today. And let's, and I want to know what makes sense to you. What questions do you have? Um, and we can look. Oh, okay. All right. Let me see. So we have a someone on LinkedIn. Hi, how are you? Went from Dr. Geneve, you went from running a nonprofit to starting your own business. What was the hardest part of staying true to yourself during that big change? The hardest part for me when I made the transition from the nonprofit world to running my own business in my late 60s was keeping my values front and center. Because being in the nonprofit world, you know, the bottom line is making a difference. It's a social mission. The nonprofit side, that's nonprofit side. The business side was about making money. So me balancing, aligning the making a difference social mission with making money business mission was one of the toughest things that I had to deal with. And so some of the things that I did was go back to, okay, so what are my values? And one of the reasons why I was in the nonprofit world for so long was that making a difference was of high importance to me. I worked in communities, helping communities and neighbors and organizations change, transform to create better communities, better neighborhoods, better schools, and worked with hundreds to um, make a better life, to transform from where they were to a better state in life, and worked with so many and learned so much. And so when I went into the business world and recognized that I also got to make some money, trying to resolve that. So being very clear, though, that the making a difference and that being a value of mine wasn't going to go away. It just wasn't. That was part of me. That was my authentic self. So that I had to, so being true to myself. So as I began to think about, well, what problems do I want to solve in my business? How do I want to help leaders be better? I began to, be real clear with, well, I want to make a difference with leaders. So let me work on those kinds of strategies and share with leaders how you can be better, how you can grow your impact and find joy in your life and have a vibrant life. And so bringing that all in and recognizing that that service mindset that I have had and have has value in the business world. So that's how I really made that change, really staying and being clear on, and I had to revisit my values, which is something that I help the leaders that I work with do, because it's important to revisit your values at different stages of your life and different stages of your career. So thank you for that question. I'm looking on TikTok, and here's a question. Let me see. Let me see if I can read that. Um, how do you know? So it looks like the question is, how can you identify your skills that you can take from one place to another? That's a good question too. How can you identify your skills? So, I talked about transferable skills, and what transferable skills are basically, they're portable. You can take them from one career to another, from one job to another, from one experience, from the workplace to home, from the workplace to in your community. They are skills that are portable. So think about a toolbox that you might have as a leader. I have a lot of conversation about our toolbox that we need as leaders. So when you think about a toolbox, you don't have just one tool, and particularly if you in midlife, you got a whole bunch of tools in that toolbox. Well, you can use those tools in different places. Okay. And so, you pull out that wrench. So you can use that wrench in different situations and to do different things. That hammer that you have in your toolbox, hammering the nail to put up a picture, hammering something else, you have tools that you can use in lots of different places. Well, those are transferable skills. How do you identify them? Well, one of the techniques that I use with the women, particularly women leaders that I work with, is the TSA, which is they go through a process of identifying their talents, their skills, and their achievements. And this TSA process really has you sitting down and writing out, which we often don't do, writing out the talents that you have, the skills that you've acquired, and the accomplishments, achievements you've made. And again, what I found is that too often as leaders, we don't do that. We're not intentional about that. To be a better leader, you need to be intimately familiar with your talents, your skills, and your achievements. In doing that and creating this inventory, you get all the answers about what skills are portable, what things you can use in other places. I'm sure in your career, particularly if you in your midlife, you've got some good communication skills. For example, you can read, you can write, you can speak. You can use those skills anywhere, everywhere, in any job. You're probably an excellent problem solver. Okay. People got problems everywhere. Okay. And if you're good at solving problems, if you have those skills of listening, being very thoughtful, being a good you can see opportunities, you can fix things, those skills are transferable. Do you understand? So, as a leader, one of the things that you must do to be a better leader is to be intimately familiar with the value that you bring, those skills. And in that process, that's how you identify those transferable, portable skills. Okay. So, TikTok over on our TikTok user, I hope that answers those questions. Okay. So, we have this question. I'm ready to return to work. Yay. I've been out of work since 2017, but have done volunteering and earned 2 degrees. Rain, first of all, let me say to you, hey, congratulations, you go. Fantastic. Um, it's just wonderful that you are not only, I'm congratulating you on your degrees, and more so because that shows you're pursuing your excellence and education, you making and doing better. That's great. And I'm particularly saying congratulations to you for your volunteering, because you're giving of yourself and giving back. And so thank you for that. I'm a big believer in that, in reciprocity, and that so many of us have gained and been, we've gained so much, we have so much, and that giving back is part of our responsibility. So I want to congratulate you and thank you for doing that. So, you ready to return to work? Well, a couple things. First of all, you that volunteering you've done, I'm sure you've gained some great experiences with that. So I want you to remember those experiences and reflect on them, and what did you learn through that? So that volunteering is a learning experience. You've met people, you've acquired skills and experiences that you didn't have before. So I want you to reflect on that. I also want you to get your mind ready to going back to work, because it be different. It's a shift, that change, as we talked about earlier. So some of the strategies we talked about, I think, would be good. In particular, because you've been out of the workforce since 2017, it might be really great to think about your personal brand and your story, and how you want to position and present yourself now, some 7 years later. And so you want to take, I want you to go through that TSA process. You want to identify your talent, your skills, your accomplishments, your achievements. I want you to think about your volunteering experiences and what you've gained and learned and how you've helped, and your degrees that you have, and then what you've done before. All of that. You have a whole lot of stuff. And I want you to think about, well, what's my brand? What's my story? How am I presenting myself as you look for those opportunities that align with your passion, your interest, and what you want to do? One other thing I want you to think about, and I want you to leverage, I'm sure with your volunteering that you've developed a whole bunch of new contacts and people that you've met. And I want you to add them to the network that you already have. Now, perhaps because you've been out of the workforce for a while, you feel your network isn't that strong. One of the things that we need to do when we think about our network is think about first the people that we know and we've experienced, who are right here with us. I call that networking sideways, the people who are right there. So if you've been volunteering, you've made some connections. And so you want to leverage those connections. You want to talk to those individuals. You want to tell them about, returning to work. You want to see if they can help you. You want to revisit and reconnect with people that you knew, liked, and trust before when you were in the workforce, etc. So building your network at this time, as well as developing and crafting your personal brand, are two essential steps. And so I just congratulate you. And don't forget to take care of yourself during this process, because it's going to be full of emotion, exciting, maybe a little anxiety in there, but whatever it is, make sure you take care of yourself. And good luck to you. Uh, please keep me posted on how you're doing. Okay. All right. Well, I think those are the questions, all of the questions that we have. Um, I don't see any more on TikTok. I'm so glad you joined. Remember, every Wednesday, 9 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, we're here. Let me know what you think, what kinds of topics you want to talk about. Let me look one more time in the uh, comments just to say hello to everyone. Thank you all for joining. Rain, Dr. Trinette. Dr. Trinette is going to be on our live show soon. Mar, good morning to you. So happy to see you and everyone who's joined. Thank you. Mwah, mwah, mwah. Until next time. Be that great leader that I know you are. Be that leader that only you can be. Bye. See you next time.